So, I popped into High House Insurance to see if they could quote for my house insurance rather than using the internet. High House got a great deal. So to celebrate, I bought a posh hairdo. It made me look beautiful, gorgeous enough to become a highly paid model. I then won Celebrity Big Brother. I had an affair with an MP. Now I'm promoting a doll of me that says, "Cool blimey, you're well fit."
Happy things happen when you talk face-to-face with High House Insurance. See if we can beat your home insurance quote from the internet. Find us on the High Street, Selsey, or call 606 552.
Hello, and a warm welcome to Manhood Internet Radio. I'm Tony Weiner, your host for this show. So, what do we have for you this week? Well, we start the programme as usual with Alison's review of what's on in the area, and that will be followed by the answers to last week's quiz. Now, here on the Manhood Peninsula, we are surrounded by a wonderful coastline and magnificent nature reserves, and this is the theme of the show. We will go over to a local company, Mulberry Divers, to hear about the fascinating life and history under the sea, and then we have an interview with Jen Atkinson at RSPB Pagham about the work she does there. We will finish the show with our local gardening experts on how best to feed the garden. So, we better get going, and it's over to Alison for a roundup of what's on in the area.
Hello once again to our weekly roundup of what's going on both in Selsey and across the whole of the Manhood Peninsula. Again this week I'm going to start off with the Witterings because they've got their normal selection of activities, and then we'll move across to Selsey, particularly with a focus on what's happening specifically this week. So over in the Witterings on Wednesday the 17th, it's table tennis time. This is a drop-in and play session for adults held at the barn from 10 o'clock until 12 midday. Also at Bracklesham Barn, roughly the same time, is CBT motorcycle training. That's held between 9 and 11 on Wednesday. And hot on the heels of that, Gyrokensis with Jen between 11 and 12. Later on, we've got belly dancing with Step Inside at Bracklesham Barn. That's from 1 until 2. Followed from 2 until 4 by short mat bowls. And if you haven't done enough that day, then why not come along to Zumba with Louise at the barn from 6:30 until 7:30. That's all on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, it's time for the toddlers again. Busy Bugs Toddler Gym from 9:15 until 12:15. Also, there's Stitch and Yarn on Thursday at the Witterings Medical Centre from 10:30 until 12:30, with Knit and Natter happening at the East Wittering Library between 11 and 12:30. The Witterings have their own Master Art group from 10 until 12 at West Wittering Memorial Hall. Then there's the West Wittering Short Mat Bowls between 10 and 12, 2 and 4, and the final session 7 till 9:30. That's a little bit longer, that one. They're being held at West Wittering Memorial Hall. If you want to know some further details, then why not call Maggie? Her phone number is 673 231. That's Maggie on 673 231. On Friday this week, again, it's short mat bowls at the barn between 2 and 4 o'clock. And then the Witterings Quilters will be having their quilting bee at St Peter's Church Hall between 10:30 in the morning and 4:30 in the afternoon. If you're interested in that one, the lady's name is Judith Rogers. She can be contacted on 511 431. That's Judith on 511 431. Now here's a special for Saturday. Acres of Coins at East Wittering Village Hall between 9 and 12 noon. That's a fundraiser in aid of the St Wilfrid's Hospice. And then on Sunday the 21st, the usual Windrush church meeting will be held at Bracklesham Barn between 10:30 in the morning and 12:45. Later that evening there's a Pond Barn quiz night starting at 8. Then on Monday, we've got the Little Ducklings Mother and Toddler Group at Bracklesham Barn between 9:30 and 11:30. Short mat bowls at 10:30 till 1. And then in the evening, yoga with Elaine between 7 o'clock and 8:30. Also in the evening, there's the ARO Ladies Beginners Kickboxing with Verity at the barn between 7:30 and 8:30. Then finally on Tuesday, little explorers play and learn together at the barn between 9:30 and 11. There's meet and greet at West Wittering Memorial Hall. They offer coffee, games, homemade soup and a roll between 10:15 and 1 o'clock. At the barn there's yoga with Elaine between 10 and 11. And then it's time for the community pop choir at the West Wittering Memorial Hall to be held between 7 and 9. I take it that's the evening. It doesn't say AM or PM, but I think that will be in the evening. Then there's the badminton club, which meets at the barn between 7:30 and 9:30 in the evening, and there's also a free pool pond at the barn. So that's it from the Witterings. We'll now move across to Selsey. Don't forget, this week at Selsey we're continuing with the Selsey Festival. I'm not going to list any of the events because I know that Sam has already done that. Just to say, do support everything that's going on. In addition then to the festival, on Wednesday the 17th, the Selsey WI are holding a beetle drive and a fish and chip supper at the Selsey Centre between 6:30 and 7 for a start. Tickets are £7.50 and you can buy those from Amanda's Hobby Hideout. All week long, Burnet's Family Fun Fair will be running on the recreation ground. You can probably hear that right across the town, so do go along to that if you have a spare evening. On Saturday the 20th of August, it's time for the summer open weekend and fundraising event at the Brent Lodge Wildlife Hospital between 10 and 4 on Saturday, and also on the 21st, Sunday, from 10 until 4. They are offering wildlife advice, arts, crafts and gifts, a bird stall, a book sale, a raffle and a tombola. Snacks and refreshments will be available, and all the funds that they raise will go towards the work of caring and rehabilitating animals concerned with British wildlife in Siddlesham. So do go along to that. The address for the Wildlife Hospital is Cowan Lane, Siddlesham, and it is easily identified from lots of signs from the main road. Also on Saturday, it's the Selsey Art and Gift Market at the Selsey Town Hall. That's being held between 10 and 3:30. With refreshments, admission is free to that. On Saturday afternoon, it's time for the Sea and Salad Fair. This is being held on East Beach Green, and it's a chance to celebrate the products and crafts of the whole of the Manhood Peninsula. And they say that it will feature lots of fun activities, some good food, local artisans and their work, and also voluntary groups. So it'll be a great place to enjoy everything that there is that makes the Manhood Peninsula so unique. They're promising underwater activities. I don't quite know where they're going to do those, but that will be interesting. Wildlife displays and local stalls and outlets, so do come along and see what you might discover. That's the Selsey Sea and Salad Fair on Saturday. Also on that day, there's the Manhood Classic Car Enthusiasts Summer Show. Now this has been established for some years now, and it's become one of the largest classic car shows on the south coast. And what's more, it's free. So do come along, relive those memories when driving was fun. This year, they're expecting around 200 vehicles on show. It's being held from 10 o'clock until 4 o'clock on the recreation ground, School Lane, Selsey. And all the monies raised from that will go towards the St Wilfrid's Hospice. Also on Saturday, the Scouts are having a cream tea event from 11 o'clock until 3 o'clock at their headquarters on School Lane. They'll be selling us hot dogs, burgers, fajitas, cream teas, tea and coffee, and either you can eat in or they can also do takeaways. So do come along and support them. They're going to have lots of items on sale, a tombola, children's activities. They're promising a bouncy castle, a shootout, score a goal competition, and there's going to be a sweet stall. So do go and support our local Scouts on Saturday. Earlier on Saturday, the Selsey Lifeboats are running a garage sale. That's going to be, as usual, at 6 Manor Lane. That starts at 9:30. Another one starting at 9:30 is the regular tabletop sale at Selsey Methodist Church. That's from 9:30 until 1, and refreshments are available. Now, if you'd like to take a table, you will need to book in advance. You need to ring 601 439. I'll repeat that, 601 439 if you want to reserve a table at the tabletop sale with the Methodist Church. Later that evening there's live entertainment at the Selsey Royal British Legion Club. They're always welcoming new members, and tonight they have a singing duo, SAS. On Sunday the 21st, the Selsey carers are holding their regular car boot sale at the Academy. That begins at 7:30 in the morning. The cost for that will be cars at £7, cars with a trailer £10 and vans at £12. So that's the Selsey carers car boot sale at the Academy. Also on Sunday there's going to be a family fun service down at the Selsey Centre between 10 o'clock in the morning and 12:45. This one is being organised by East Beach Church. It's going to be an informal style with a quiz, puppets, children's songs and stories. It's open to everyone and it's free entry. Don't forget the Wildlife Hospital are still having their fair, same as on Saturday. And it's also time for the Selsey Church's Flower Festival. Now that's a joint venture with all the churches, but it's held at East Beach Church between 12 and 4. Entry is free and you can go and see spectacular flower displays. All 4 churches have worked together to produce this festival of flowers, and it celebrates a wealth of horticulture in the area. Also on Sunday, Sea and Salad Fair at East Beach Green, same as yesterday, so do go along if you missed it on Saturday. On Tuesday the 23rd of August, here's something different. There's a music workshop to be held, your chance to have a go at the recorder and or the ukulele. They're offering 2-hour taster sessions, one at 10 and one at 1:45. That's going to be held at 10 and 1:45 at St Peter's Church Hall, St Peter's Crescent, Selsey. The cost for that will be £15 for a single session or £25 if you want to sign up for both. Refreshments will be available, tea and coffee. If you'd like to go, you need to speak to one of the tutors, either Fran Jones or Sally Pace. Now you can contact Sally on 07957 965 483. I'll repeat that for you for the recorder and ukulele day. 07957 965 483. Alternatively, you can get in touch with her by email. It's sallypace1. That's Sally, PAICE, digit 1 at hotmail.com. So that's the music workshop on Tuesday. Don't forget there are summer activities still going on for all the youth in Selsey. I'll just do a quick rundown of those to remind you. We've got the filmmaking project every Tuesday. That's from 10 until 5. It's free to join and it's suitable for those aged 11 and over. That one's held at the Bridge. And there's an activities drop-in day on a Thursday. That's from 2 until 5. The entrance fee for that is £1 and that is suitable for ages 10 to 16, held at the Selsey Centre. The Summer Art Experience is on Wednesdays from 11:30 until 4. That one's free and it's held at the Bridge. Then there's also the Gardening Project, held on Fridays between 11 and 5. That one's free to join and you have to be 11 years and over. So if you're interested in that, you need to go down to the Bridge where it's held. So those are the summer activities. If you're a parent with youngsters and you need any extra support during these school holidays, then do feel free to try the Parents Drop-In at the Bridge. You'll find support and help down there. Between 9:30 and 11 on a Monday, 4 till 6 Mondays and Thursdays. And dads can pop in between 6 and 7 o'clock to a safe space there on a Wednesday. If you're interested in ringing them, try 075 087 16037. I'll repeat that, 075 087 16037. That's for parents support. So, loads to do this week. Hope you enjoy those activities and don't forget to support the Selsey Festival. And if you want to know any more details, then listen again to Sam's broadcast because she gives a full rundown of that. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you, Alison. Plenty of things to keep us busy. Now over to Keith with the answers to last week's quiz.
And we've got you the answers to last week's Kevin's Connections quiz. And Kevin asked us, what class of fast sailing ship was the Cutty Sark? And she was, of course, a clipper. Which Yorkshire-born bowler took 19 wickets for England in a 1956 Test match against Australia? That was Jim Laker. The body of clerics that convenes to elect a new pope is known as a college of what? And that was cardinals. Which 1995 Michael Mann movie starred Al Pacino as Detective Vincent Hanna and Robert De Niro as thief Neil McCauley? That was Heat. And which 2001 piece of US legislation has a name derived from its full title, Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism? And that, of course, is the USA Patriot Act. And the link is, of course, American sports teams. LA Clippers, LA Lakers, the Cardinals, Miami Heat, and the New England Patriots. Yes, Kevin.
Now we go back to Keith, who is talking to Steve and Linda Frampton from Mulberry Divers about the fascinating life and history under the sea.
Right, with me now I've got Steve and Linda Frampton from Mulberry Divers, and they're going to be telling us a lot about what's going on just off the coast from where we live. So, good morning, Linda. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Morning.
Welcome to Manhood Internet Radio. Right, tell us what's going on in your part of the world, because there are things offshore that I'm sure would frighten me to death.
Thank you, Keith. There is nothing offshore that will frighten you to death. But do you know what lies beneath the waves at Selsey?
Oh no, I wish I did. Please tell.
There is a wealth of marine life. On the bottom, you can see anemones, dahlia anemones that look like the flowers in the garden, brightly coloured. Snakelocks anemones with writhing tentacles like the Medusa in the Greek fables. Tiny white anemones that we call daisy anemones. Beadlet anemones, bright red that you've probably often seen closed up in rock pools. There are sponges in a wealth of colours, orange, yellow, white and pink. There are also fanworms, beautiful delicate fans in white or sprays of colours like a peacock's tail, which disappear with sudden movement, so all you see are little brown twigs or sticks coming out of the sand at the bottom. There are crabs, the harbour crabs in blue or green, which you probably frequently caught in little nets. Hermit crabs. These are the shells that scuttle away fast when you look at them or approach. Spider crabs, weedy rocks or pebbles which also get up and run off. Edible crabs, Selsey is famous for these, from any size, from tiny about the size of a penny all the way through to the size of a dinner plate. Velvet swimming crabs, with bright red eyes and blue zigzags down their legs. Sponge crabs, which strangely enough live close to their sponges and wear coats the same colour as the sponge to act as camouflage. If you're lucky and look closely, leech's spider crabs, which associate themselves with the snakelocks anemones, can be found close to or in the anemone. There are the lobsters, again something Selsey is famous for in terms of edibles, the large ones, and also the squat lobsters which look more like crayfish. You'll find shrimps peeking out from close to rocks or crevices, and if you put your hand down and stay very, very still and you're lucky, they may well approach you and start cleaning you. There are fish, gobies, blennies, shannies, dragonets, in all shapes, sizes and colours. They all prefer to stay close to the bottom because they don't have swim bladders and are not very good swimmers at all. There are the pipefish, a much bigger version of a seahorse but straight. And at the moment in the sandy areas there are flatfish of all sizes and baby cuttlefish and squid. You often realise you've missed the baby cuttlefish and squid when you see the little squirt of black ink as they disappear away fast. There are starfish in yellow and orange, also in all sizes, and there's a wealth of shellfish, whelks, mussels and painted top shells. In midwater we can see myriads of small juvenile silverfish, and there are also the bigger wrasse, bream and bass that the fishermen sit on the beach to catch. These are just some of the things that have been spotted recently in the shallow waters along the beach and groins around the lifeboat station and at East Beach whilst we have been snorkelling. We're currently offering people snorkeling tours, and these are available throughout August and September. You don't have to have the equipment, or you can hire from us. You must be able to swim, and for those who have never snorkeled previously, we recommend coming and having a lesson in the pool first. You have to book in advance, so why not contact us at the dive centre and then join us on our next snorkeling tour to see what you can find. I'm now going to hand over to Steve, who's going to tell you what you can see further offshore if you're a diver.
Thank you, Linda. The English Channel that's immediately in front of us at Selsey provides us with a wide range of diving habitats. Immediately in front of Selsey is a very large shallow area before we get to the deeper water beyond the Hours reefs. That shallow area gives us a large range of dive sites that are suitable for people who perhaps have just finished learning to dive, or for those who simply want to have a nice leisurely dive and perhaps take underwater photographs. What you can see in that shallow area is immense. Sometimes we just drift along with the current and find ourselves passing over different rays, quite large thornback rays with their patterned backs, or undulate rays, and row upon row of sleeping cat sharks, or dogfish as you may know them. We also have many pieces of Mulberry Harbour left from the Second World War. One in particular is about a mile out from the beach opposite Pagham. It's called the Far Mulberry, and it is a fairly well broken up rectangle of reinforced concrete now. It's a very popular dive, and if you look on YouTube and simply search for Far Mulberry or Outer Mulberry, then you will see it's well visited, and people now with the digital cameras that are available take their own pictures and their own videos, and there's quite a wide variety to look at. Further out, offshore, we have a range that goes from underwater cliffs, such as on the Mixon Hole, where the drop-off goes from 6 meters down to 25 meters in a sheer vertical cliff of blue clay. And there's a very good video of that on YouTube if you simply search for Mixon Hole, and it gives you a very almost armchair view of exactly what you would see from the bottom to the top, complete with a swimming dogfish cat shark. And there's also a huge variety of wrecks. We're quite fortunate here. We have some very old wrecks in Bracklesham Bay which date from the Napoleonic times. We also have some wrecks towards Chichester Harbour which actually are very early models of British submarines. There's one called the A1, which is nowadays a protected wreck, so it can only be dived under a licence, but gives you a very good idea of how small these submarines were and how cramped it must have been inside. There are also ships from both world wars. So in the case of the First World War, many cargo and merchant ships were sunk about 5 or 6 miles off Selsey Beach. There's a very popular one called the Sharala. This was about a 6,000 ton cargo ship, passenger liner as it was called in those days, on its way to India. And it was carrying a huge cargo of, amongst other things, African elephant tusks, Dundee marmalade and Model T cars. Now much of interest was professionally salvaged after the war, but people still occasionally see different objects today around the wreck when they're diving it, although of course, as it's now almost 100 years old, it's quite well broken up, and you tend not to be looking at a complete ship but rather fragments of a ship. There are also plenty of World War II wrecks, and there's one particularly fascinating pair which are just south of the Nab Tower. So there is a fairly large passenger liner called the Cuba that was sank in April 1945. That's quite big. Even today it's still large as a dive site, although it's well broken up. But that was sunk by a German U-boat. And less than 5 miles away is the wreck of the German U-boat that actually sank the Cuba. It's called UB1195. It was a Type 7 U-boat, and it was sunk by British escorts very shortly after it managed to sink the Cuba. So if you plan your day carefully, you can see both wrecks in one day, which is something quite unusual. All of these sites we visit from East Beach. We have an 8 metre
rigid hull inflatable boat, or RIB as it's usually called, and we run a shuttle service for divers to go and visit these sites, and they can choose whether they want to go and do something shallow and have probably quite a long dive and take their cameras, or whether they wish to go and visit a wreck, which will be a slightly shorter dive. But all of those we include on a regular basis. And I do encourage you, if you'd like to know what we see and what it's like, and all of these wrecks have plenty of fish on them, so sometimes you struggle to see the metal for the fish. And if you don't quite believe me, go to YouTube or to our Facebook page, Google some of the wreck names, and you will see plenty of examples of what people can see. So thank you. Back to Linda.
Thank you, Steve. You can contact us if you'd like to know more in the Dive Centre, Mulberry Divers at East Beach. You can give us a call on 01243 60 1000. We're also on Facebook, just under Mulberry Divers, and you can find us on the internet. We'd love an opportunity to talk to you and tell you what you could see. So why not transform your life and come into the water with us? Alternatively, we will be at Selsey Sea and Salad as part of Screen on the Green on Saturday the 20th and Sunday the 21st of August, when amongst other things there are opportunities to try snorkeling and try freediving.
Well, thank you very much, Steve and Linda. It's amazing. I mean, I've sat here enthralled and listened to what's about. I mean, some fish that are not really any good at being fish because they can't swim very good, and some other old wrecks in Selsey apart from myself. So I'm very pleased to hear about all that, and I would urge people to do it. I once had the chance to try out diving, and when I was abroad, and I did. And then the following day, when we were supposed to be going, they said, "Oh, you need to fill this form in, the medication you're on." And as soon as I filled it in, they said, "Sorry, you can't do it." And I was absolutely gutted. I really was. It was something I'd looked forward to. But had we been at home, of course, I could probably have got over that, contacted a doctor, and they would have given me the all clear to do a certain amount of diving. So, but it's something I've not gone into since, because I always think the water around here might be a bit cold. But then once you see the sun out, you see people swimming, you think, well, it can't be that cold, can it? So, and I think that might put a lot of people off. They might think it's a bit cold.
Well, the water temperature at the moment is about 18, 19 degrees centigrade, and it does to some extent depend where you go. So shallow water will be warmer. Deeper water offshore may be just a little bit cooler, but there are different ways to manage the cold, and the key one in terms of UK is to make sure you're wearing the right equipment. And when we teach people to dive, and when we go diving ourselves, we wear something called a dry suit, which basically gives you insulation and enables you to stay dry and warm all the year round.
It takes away that initial shock, does it?
It does indeed. And for those doing the snorkeling, we have wetsuits in a variety of thicknesses, depending on how much you feel the cold.
Okay, well, it couldn't be any better than that, could it? Well, I would urge everybody to get along and talk to Steve and Linda, because it's an opportunity that's just sitting there in Selsey, and I don't think enough people take advantage of it. And as I say, I wish I could, and maybe I will. Maybe I'll do something to edge me bets and have a crack at it. Anyway, thanks Steve and Linda for coming in and explaining to us what's about around Selsey, and let's hope it takes up from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Well, if that has whetted your appetite, as it were, for diving or snorkeling, then why not pop into Mulberry Divers at East Beach in Selsey for some underwater sessions? Now, on the similar subject of the great outdoors, we go over to Keith, who is at RSPB Pagham, talking to Jan Atkinson about the work she does there.
Right, with me now, I've got Jan Atkinson from the RSPB Pagham Harbour and Medmarine Nature Reserve. And it's rather wonderful down here today. It's a lovely, gorgeous sunny day. And Jan's going to be telling us a bit about what she does here at the Nature Reserve. Morning, Jan.
Morning.
Right, now, tell us, what is your part in all this? Because there's an awful lot goes on down here.
There's a huge amount goes on down here, and it's a beautiful reserve. My role is connected to the Little Tern project at Pagham. I go out into the community I do lots of work with youth groups, schools, brownies guides, but I'm also out on the reserve a lot with telescopes, and we're looking at the life at Pagham and Medbury. It's about little terns, but also we've got all sorts of other birds that are nesting here. So it's really quite an exciting environment. So my role is really diverse, and people may have seen me in the visitor centre and doing family events as well. So it's quite varied.
Very busy by the sounds of it as well.
Absolutely.
Fabulous environment to spend your working day.
It's wonderful. And on a sunny day like today, we've had pond dipping, which I haven't been involved in, but our wonderful volunteers have. We've had lots of families coming down, and that happens every Thursday here. So what happens is families get used to coming down on a regular basis and either doing arts and crafts on a Tuesday or pond dipping on a Thursday, and it all just becomes very familiar, and they begin to bring picnics down and really enjoy the environment as much as we do.
Well, it's great to see that it's being used as much as it is, because it'd be an awful waste. The whole place is a huge place, obviously. It covers a lot of ground, and I imagine most people that work on it cover a lot of ground with it, because if you go out walking around there, you can walk for miles.
It's beautiful and it's different. Something that's unique about it is the salt marsh. So I take guide groups and brownie groups down, and sometimes we'll just sit with chalks and paper and actually do the colours that we can see on the harbour. And just the change in the light and the fact that it looks very different when the tide's out to when the tide's in. Get different types of birds. You'll notice little terns fishing in small pools. They're shallow fishing birds, so sometimes you might notice them when the tide's in, but when it's out, they're still fishing for those small fish, and because they've got an abundance of food, it's why they're beginning to do well again on the harbour, so it's wonderful.
Well, that's great. Anything that improves the wildlife can't be a bad thing at all.
No.
I mean, I did notice, anybody that drives in and out of Selsey can't fail to notice that the water level in the pond or the pool or whatever you'd like to call it, to the side of the road there is gone down quite dramatically recently, and it's very, very shallow. Well, it always was quite shallow, but it's almost disappeared. Is there a reason for that?
There is a reason for that. We have a breach in the side of that pool, and the water has, it's not building up the same, and so therefore we haven't got as much bird life on that pool as it would normally be. But it's a natural phenomenon. We did try and do a temporary fix, but that didn't work, unfortunately. So now in the autumn we have to address how that can be fixed, and it's quite a large job. So it's not just a plug it and see, because it's an ever moving feast. So that's something that we'll be working on in the autumn, because
that seems to affect or have affected the amount of twitchers or bird watchers that we see down here, that I've seen when I've coming past in and out. You always used to see them up in the hide on the left, looking out over the pond. Now there doesn't seem to be so many of them, or they don't seem to be there quite so often.
Well, it has affected the numbers of birds that are on the pool. So obviously bird watchers will be coming knowing that we have a lot of life on that pool, but that will change again, and as we sort that problem out, that will definitely, those numbers will build again. And we still had a lot of bird watchers down on other parts of the harbour, and they always still come and have a look and see what's there. We still get life on that pool. It's just not quite in the same numbers, and a lot at this time of year, in the when the little terns start to come back April to May, and they sort of start to go back to Africa now, sort of July, August time, but we get a lot of people coming to see the life on Tern Island, which is, we've been encouraging the little terns onto that island. There are threatened species that come to the harbour, and they come from Africa, and they often go on the spit, the spit that's formed by the longshore drift. They like fresh shingle, but they're very, very small little terns. Their eggs are the size of the shingle, their chicks are very camouflaged, so that's why we have to put fencing up at Church Norton along that spit. But every year we clear the vegetation from Tern Island, and we put decoys and sounds down in the hope that they'll choose to come onto the island because it's safer, they're less vulnerable on there. But each year they choose to go on the spit. But this year they've taken us up on the offer and they've gone on to Tern Island. No, but this year they have. They've gone on to Tern Island, and they've bred successfully there this year. So we're very excited that hopefully next year when they come back, they'll be doing the same thing and going back to Tern Island. There was also black-headed gulls that nested there, and they all seem to live in relative peace on that island. So for a lot of migratory birds this year, they were a bit slow coming back, a bit lower in numbers. But for us, the main focus is that we've had 10 fledglings, little tern fledglings, off of the island, possibly 11. And for us, that main focus is that that's where they've done it. They've done it on the sort of safer environment of Tern Island. So that's wonderful.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. To see birds starting to thrive again that perhaps were diminishing in numbers, because it's happening throughout the world with birds now that the habitats are being taken away from them, and some of them can adapt and some of them can't, and so those that can't, we're in danger of losing. The same with many species of animals as well as birds, but that's a success story in itself, and I'm sure there are more success stories coming out of Pagham, because everybody I've spoken to down here seems to be so devoted to what they're doing. And have you got any more projects coming up?
Well, it's an ever-changing environment. We have lots of projects coming up. We've got some changes going on the harbour, sort of in the visitor centre and around the visitor centre in the discovery area. And in fact, Roy, our visitor experience officer, has made a wonderful PowerPoint that you can come and watch, because it's quite complex for me to explain, but you can come and watch it in the visitor centre. So it's a really, not only come and have a nice cup of tea and coffee with us and say hello, but yeah, come and see what our plans are for the future. And we run education here at Pagham, so we've got an education team based at Pulborough, but they do education here, and again all of those programmes are beginning to build, and we'd like to encourage local schools to think about coming here. It's very different, it's geography in action. Of course at Medbury we've got the realignment scheme, and as a flood defence that's working fantastically, and then as a byproduct of that we have a wonderful nature reserve that's forming. And here at Pagham we've got the salt marsh, we've got longshore drift to help people understand what happens with that, the geology of that. So it's a very vital environment. We've got a huge amount of different habitats, a huge amount of different types of birds. When I go out into the community, I'm doing all sorts of things to do with the countryside code, do with camouflage, predators, all those things which tie in with habitat work. I go out to schools and we do about different habitats. We look at their grounds and my environment, look at the differences. So Pagham and Medbury are definitely places which we all need to learn about, and to come and look down on a salt marsh is like looking at a 3D map. So it's a wonderful place to bring children and as adults to gain an understanding of what's going on.
I would have thought, from a personal point of view, that it's the ideal place to bring kids, because there's children, because there's so much to do and there's so much to find out, and there's so much that they won't know that they can learn.
Oh, absolutely.
It'd be a wonderful experience, and I would urge all schools within 100 miles to bring your children down here and let them have a look at RSPB Pagham and Medbury.
Well, if we think about when I've got children down here, and I know the education team thinking about going out with new eyes and new ears, because you will hear things you've never heard before, or you didn't know what they were.
Oh, absolutely.
And you will smell things. The salt marsh has a smell. We can talk about tides, we can talk about adaptation, so looking at why some plants in the salt marsh can cope with salt water, but when we had a salt water flood in the discovery area, those plants and trees couldn't cope with it. So it's all about learning about adaptation, and but definitely the textures we have here, even the art that can be done from that. Just been talking to a local artist, and it's looking at the colours and the depth of colours and the change in the light as the day goes on. It's a wonderful place.
Yes, and has some of the best sunsets I've ever seen.
Absolutely, they are beautiful.
Is there a website that people can look at, Jan?
There is a website, and it's got all of our events that we have, because we do all sorts of things like bat walks and photography workshops, astronomy nights as the winter goes on. So if you just go onto the RSPB website and put in Pagham Harbour and Medmerry, and it'll come up with all of those events. And the other thing I'd just like to point out is that on the RSPB website it has a great facility for listening to bird sounds. So if you're not sure what a bird sound is, or when I go into schools and brownie groups and things, I even get my phone out and we play the different sounds. So it's a great website. It's got lots of ideas for activities you can do at home.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if you go onto the RSPB website and put in Pagham Harbour and Medmerry, and you'll find out everything that's happening down here and what we can look forward to in the future. Well, thanks for coming in and having a chat with us, Jan. I know you're in the middle of a very busy day. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan and Keith. Fascinating stuff. Still on the theme of the outdoors, but closer to home this time, we go over to David, our gardening expert, who tells us about feeding the garden.
Good morning. Today I'd like to talk about feeding the garden. All fertiliser consists of nitrogen, phosphate and potash. And if you get a bag of fertiliser or one of those liquid fertiliser containers, on the back it will give you an analysis of nitrogen, phosphate and potash, N, P and K, K for potassium. It also mentions micronutrients as well, of which there are about 7. These are less important, but today I want to talk about N, P and K. Nitrogen is needed for growth, gets the grass growing, gets the plants growing. Phosphate, especially in spring, is required for root development. Get a good healthy root development so it can explore the soil and collect more nutrients. And potash is for fruits and for flowers, and also is thought to harden the lawn to make it less susceptible to disease and also to drought. So if you look on the back of a container of liquid fertiliser, you'll see an analysis of perhaps 4, 4.5, 8. I've taken that one off a tomato fertiliser. That 4 is 4% nitrogen in that pack, 4.5% phosphate and 8% potassium. And that's the best analysis for tomatoes. Plenty of potassium gives you good fruits. If you get a bag of Grow More fertiliser, which is a generic name, it'll be a 7-7-7 or a 15-15-15. 7% nitrogen, 7% phosphate, 7% potassium. Fertiliser then, N, P and K. You can get organic and inorganic fertilisers. Inorganic fertilisers are the fertilisers manufactured by the big fertiliser manufacturers. All they're taking really is nitrogen from the air and making a nitrogen product. Phosphate they dig up in Morocco and North Africa and treat. And the potassium is actually mined, straight mined, up in the north of England in Cleveland. It's mixed together and made an inorganic fertiliser. Fertilisers there really just to replenish what's taken out of the soil by the plants, and also to put nutrients back that that particular soil may not have with it. Organic fertilisers, if you're into organic growing, is generally considered to be fish, blood and bone. It'll show a 6%, 6%, 6% nutrient analysis. It's not strictly organic though, because the potash, the 6 at the end, actually will be made up of potash dug up and mixed in with it. Bone meal is generally a 3-15-0, very high in phosphate. Fertiliser can come as a powder, a granule, liquid fertiliser, or those slow release plugs that you get which you put into your house plants. So what are we going to use the fertiliser for? For your lawn, you want a high nitrogen fertiliser in the spring with a fairly high phosphate, and as the season develops you particularly want a potash later on to harden it up and get the grass to have less disease. For vegetables, any allotment grower will know, you generally put on a Grow More a 777 or 1515 at the beginning of the season. Potatoes particularly are very hungry and will require a high fertiliser application. For your borders, I generally put on a 777 or a 1515 throughout the season, perhaps a bit in the spring to start it off and a bit later on as well. Generally scatter it around the plants, just a handful, and just gently fork it in. Similarly for shrubs, if you're planting shrubs, always put a good handful of bone meal in. It's high phosphate, gets a good root development and gets the plant away quickly. And then later in the season, as the borders, probably put on some grow more, some 777 or 1515. Roses are also particularly hungry plants. You can get general rose fertiliser, and the recommendation is a handful of that sprinkled around the plant and then gently forked in as the season starts, and probably sometime after the first flush of flowers you put another handful on. I wouldn't put any more on late in the end of July, otherwise it will stimulate lush green growth which will be of no use to the plant and will be frosted off at the first frosts. If you've got pot plants, generally get one of those little plugs, those slow release plugs, push it into the soil of the pot plant. It will give you a slow release fertiliser over the season, and it means you don't even have to keep putting on fertilisers. For your pots of geraniums or your hanging baskets or the other plants that you've got growing which are annuals, I would put a weekly feed on of one of these liquid fertilisers that you can buy. Usually a tapful in a watering can. I usually do it once a week, and you will be surprised how well the plants really grow. So, all fertiliser, NP and K.
Thank you, David. Very helpful information. And now we've reached the end of this week's show. So it's thanks to all our contributors, including Local Life magazine, our sound editor John Mallett, our presenters Alison, David and Keith, not forgetting of course our producer John Fletcher. It's goodbye from me, Tony Weiner. Until next time, bye.